Hello. Welcome to this Q&A with me, Depesh Mandalia, founder at the BPM Method and CEO of SM Commerce. So we're going to get started just shortly. I think we've had about 300 people show an interest in the Q&A. We'll see how many people actually turn up live and ask those questions. And like I've said in the post for this Q&A, post your questions below. So what you want to ask about Facebook ads? I did the same thing last week. We had a huge response. I didn't get to answer as many as I wanted in the hour. So if you do have a question, make sure you post in the comments. I can see all the comments coming through on the app that I'm using. You have to be on there live. So make sure you're on the live, put hashtag live to ask your question, and I'll answer it from the comments when they come through. Whilst we're waiting, I'd love to know who's online. So, hey, Sal, John's here, Michal. I'll get to your questions shortly. Let me know who's online, where you're from. It's always cool for me to know who I recognize and who's new as well. So that's pretty cool. And I'll be going through the questions that were posted in the initial invite, as well as the ones that are being posted into the comments as well. Hey, Michal, Day is here as well, Crinal. Who else we got? El Hati, Moonlight. Is that your real name? I don't know. Maybe not. Star, we'll come to the questions shortly. Crinal, you're here as well. Nathan, Brandon's here. Emily from France. Not French names, so I'm guessing you're enjoying France as an alternative from maybe the UK. Sounds like an English name. John from Calgary. That's pretty cool. So I'm in Red Deer at the moment, so not too far. Stefano, Mihail from Romania. That's cool. Masatoshi from Vancouver. That's not too far as well. Alex, I don't know how to pronounce your name. You're in London, Canada. Sal, Masai, Alex from Dublin. Oh, I didn't realize you're in Dublin. That's awesome. Watching from Syria. That's pretty awesome as well. Aham, great to have you here. Emily's from Scotland. Yep, that makes sense. Nuno from Portugal. And by the way, I'm here on this live with you guys. My team are on that screen behind your screen that you're looking at me from. And I'm dedicating this hour to you guys to go through questions ahead of watching my football team. That's a big deal. If you're asking, I'm an Arsenal fan, and we are currently crushing it on our way to the finals. Right, let me get started on these questions. Oh, Robin, you're in BC. I didn't realize that. That's cool. Justin, where is it gone? There as well. All right, cool. So keep your questions coming in the comments below. I'm going to go through the questions that have been already submitted, and we'll crack through as many as we can in the next 56 minutes. So let's get started with this one. So there's a question on 5W avatar building. So just as a recap, 5W avatar is what I use in the BPM method to define my customers. So the 5Ws, who they are, what the transformation is, what the emotional reasons for them buying are, what the functional reasons, like the benefits, are for them to buy, and why would they not buy as well. So the question here is, when building an avatar, do you build multiple or just one? I build multiple. The thing is, in most cases, unless you're going specific after a single niche, you're going to have multiple. So we're working with a hair care brand right now, and we were just talking about this week. There's a particular younger audience that use the hair care product for one purpose, and a slightly older audience that use it for a different purpose. So the transformations of what they want to get through are going to be different. Functional benefits are probably the same. The barriers and objections are probably the same. Some of the hooks and angles we create will be different. So that's why we kind of split those out. It just becomes easier to communicate and build your offers as well. So you got quite a few questions bundled in. Let's have a look. So see if you have multiple winning different audiences, do you build out multiple avatars and try to scale them out simultaneously? Yes, so I wouldn't go too broad first. What you want to do is find the audiences and the creatives that are working, push those as far as you can. If you've got bandwidth for testing and budget, and then you can do as many as you want. But for many of you, don't stretch yourself. The first thing is, can I find audiences that work? Can I find creatives that work? Can I get them to prospecting? Can I get them scaling? Don't overstretch yourself as well. So you've actually just said in the next sentence, we tried this but failed and had better results doing one avatar at a time. So I'd stick with that if it's working for you. Second question, if by doing multiple avatars and multiple different personalizations on our lander for each copy and avatar, would it cause issue for Facebook's machine learning? So there are tools out there. I think Unbounce is one of them, where you can add URL parameters and it will change the landing pages. So I remember, I think back in 2012, 2013, when I first started working with some of these Unbounce pages, we were scaling to, I would say, hundreds, if not close to 1,000+ landing pages for our paid search campaigns, because they're all regional and town-based. It was a UK law firm, and we were able to customize those landers based on parameters we're passing in the URL. So even the headline, or we could talk about London, Manchester, different locations and stuff like that. So that's entirely possible. You can scale up landing page rollout without having to create one new landing page every time you have a persona. So have a look at Unbounce. I'm sure other tools do it as well. But if you're looking to customize, like we were even talking about it for this hair care brand, we could have a customization where we could just change the headline to appeal to match up with our hooks as well. So I would consider that as well. Robin, do you still recommend graduation testing? In some cases, when I've done this in the past, it doesn't always offer consistent results and almost seem to cause more harm with the start-stop. I still, to this day, do it. I've been doing it since 2015, and it has worked. I just had a coaching call with my elite students earlier, and one of the examples that was sent through, it wasn't kind of set up in the right way. And that's generally the time where I see graduation testing not working. So Robin, for example, if you're in the BPM method group, there's a number of trainings I've put in outside of the BPM method into the coaching calls. Have a look at those, or post your screens in the BPM method group, assuming you're still in there, and show your setup. The core thing about graduation testing, and I'm just about to write a post, I was doing that just before I came onto this live, is about doing small, limited testing outside of your prospecting. And there's two reasons for this. Number one, when you've got your prospecting, you don't want to affect good performance by dropping in ads that don't have proven results, right? And the second part of it is I take advantage of something called discount bidding. It's Facebook's way of taking an ad, giving you really good traffic impressions in that audience, and just testing to see how your audience reacts. And I want to use that also to know if my ads are going to work with an audience, or the audience is going to work with my ads, whichever one I've kind of primed and tested. So it's a way of just dipping ads into different audiences just to see if they work. Where I see most people commonly failing is that they continue running those ads. And I saw one today. I think he spent about 700 euros testing the ads in an ad set. I know just by looking at those numbers, he's gone way beyond the testing threshold. The testing threshold is based on the number of impressions. The reason I do that is because your CPM, your costs, will vary across different audiences. So, people will say, spend, let's say $25. If you get a sale, scale it. If you don't, then kill it. Problem with that is when you say, right, my target is I'm going to spend $25. What if your CPM rockets to $50? What if it goes to $75 or $100? That's not many impressions. So that's why I focus on impressions, test the ad out, get to 1,000 or 2,000 impressions. If they work, great. If they don't, then we move on. Question from Ibrahim. So you've sent a screenshot which shows your cost per view content and the attribution windows showing really high cost for day one. Currently optimized with 1 day click and 1 day view. From these numbers, do you think we'll see better results if we optimize for 1 day click instead? Without even looking at those numbers, go and test it. Like the amount of times I see questions like this and say, I've done this, what do you think about that? In this kind of scenario, you've got your ad set up as 1 day click plus 1 day view, and you're asking me the question, will 1 day click work better? Without looking at your niche, your lander, your performance, your stats, and going deep into your particular setup, whatever I say is irrelevant. What I will say, or looking at it in terms of recommendations, will be irrelevant. So what I would say is go run a Facebook split test where you just take one ad in each, and all you change at the ad set level is one ad set is 1 day click, 1 day view. One ad set is 1 day click. Run those in parallel. What Facebook will do when you run the split test is it will take your audience and your budget, and it will do a strict A/B test. So this audience only see the 1 day, 1 click, 1 day click, 1 day view optimization. This audience just see the 1 day click. And then you have your answer. Like, don't someone like me who's doing this day in, day out, it doesn't matter if it's me or another expert, we can give you opinions, we can give you experiences, but we can't give you factual data without looking at your particular setup. By doing a split test, you're answering that for yourself. And I think split tests are massively underutilized. So that's definitely worth looking at as well. Anthony from India. So you've invested 3,500 USD last year, made less money and incurred a big loss, wanted to come back stronger. Question is, what is something I need to focus on in order to develop as a successful marketer? So you've said you understand product and audience and offer, but not about funnel. Can you explain in detail? So I'll explain as detailed as I can, given this is a kind of live Q&A with other questions as well. So there's 4 parts of a successful ad campaign. Doesn't matter if it's Facebook or Snapchat or anything else. You need a product that has a great proposition, it solves a problem, or it creates a new opportunity. You have an audience that at least is defined, doesn't have to be laser defined at this stage. You have an offer that connects the product to the audience. An offer is a message, essentially, your creative, your angles, your hooks. And then you need a funnel. That funnel could be a call, it could be to visit a store, it could be to go online and transact, whatever it is. Now the funnel part, so you're asking for details on that. Now, looking at your stats, it's hard to see exactly where the problem is and what's going on. But when I look at funnel, I'm looking at a few things here. Number one is, am I making Facebook happy? Because if Facebook's happy, I get lower costs and I get higher conversion rates. What does Facebook need? It needs fast loading landing pages. It needs compliant landing pages. It needs landing pages that are converting well. It needs landing pages that are, allowing people to flow through. Once you have your pixel installed on your website, you're basically giving Facebook access to everything that a user does on the website. So Facebook can see everything. One of the most negative signals that you can get is when you see a user, they click an ad, they go to the website, and within 30 seconds have bounced back onto Facebook. So they've just hit the back button on the mobile or the browser. That tells Facebook that your ad potentially worked well because you got the click, but your lander did not match up. So the congruence, the link between the lander, the ad and the lander did not match up. So Facebook will downgrade you for that. So this is why when you look at your quality metrics, you might see your lander, your ad, etc., has a below average, higher than average experience versus other people in the auction. That's what Facebook are looking at. So getting the funnel right is not just about optimizing your conversion rate. It's also the speed and the flow and the other metrics as well, and making sure that you're delivering and you're matching what you're saying you're going to deliver in your ad as well. So Anthony, you've also asked about offers as well. So I kind of just explained that. So offers is really about, can I find a core message that's going to resonate with my audience on one side and what my product is about on the other side? So that's the simplest term for it, but building offers really comes down to doing the research on the audience, understanding the kind of core needs and emotional hooks and angles, the product benefits, and tying that all in together. So I mentioned earlier about the 5 Ws, the 5W avatar. That's the core part of building offers and being able to construct things that are going to work for people as well. What is something I need to develop to become a successful marketer and advertiser if you give me an opportunity to learn from you? So that's a really broad question. I actually answered this in my group last week. Personally, for me, it was copywriting. I'm not saying that is the be all and end all, and that's the thing that's going to solve everyone's problems. For me, learning copywriting opened up so much because I started off managing landing pages, optimizing landing pages, and then from there I went into emails and affiliates and SEO and paid search and Google and Facebook and all these other channels. And the string through all of that through the last 10, 15 years for me has been in learning and I always say perfecting. There's always a chance to learn, but learning and getting better and better at copywriting. So copywriting is a deep subject. It's not just a case of, can I write nicely and is it readable and does it make sense? It's about, can I construct a story? When I was younger, I used to like writing fiction stories. So I'd always be thinking in terms of, beginning, middle, and end. And when you're creating copy, when you're creating your funnels, your landers, everything is about beginning, middle, and end. And you need to kind of find ways to construct your copy in a way that leads people in. So you start with a hook, just like a book has a title on the front of the book. Without that, someone's going to walk past it as well. Then you need to be able to attract and engage and convert, etc. So that, for me, copywriting is one of the biggest things. Aham says, picking multiple interests, 3 to 5. You've got 5 to 10 million audiences and choosing only Facebook and IG feed. Unchecking reach expansion, 40 plus women, 4 countries. Would this result in $30 to $40 CPMs? I am not Facebook. I'm not the auction. I do not know. All I would say to you is test it and see what happens. There are many factors that go into CPM. It's not just a case of your targeting equals your cost. It's your targeting, it's your pixel, it's your page, your ad account maturity, your landing page performance, your ad engagement. There's a whole list of things that impact your CPMs. Go to my Facebook group, search my name, search CPMs. I've listed this many, many times. Some people listen, some people ignore, but it's all listed in there as well. So you've said on Black Friday, CPMs went to $230. First start doing drop shipping. So I would really try and understand, as I mentioned before, it comes down to what's important to Facebook and are you delivering that? CPMs are auction costs. That's Facebook saying you as an advertiser will pay this amount. How does Facebook decide that? It's not just competition. It's not just who you're targeting. It's also you in terms of the quality of your signals as an advertiser that you're giving to Facebook. If you can really improve those quality signals and go into my group, go and search those posts or join the BPM method, it's all laid out there as well. That's how you're going to get those low CPMs. We're working with a clothing brand in the US. We've been working with them for about 2-3 years now. Consistently, they've been sub $10, even when they're scaling, even when it's kind of Q4 and it goes up to $12, $13. This is US, women 25 plus, et cetera, et cetera. So it's not just a case of just because you're targeting that audience, you're going to get a certain CPM. It's targeting the audience plus everything else you've got going. This particular brand, we worked with them on their organic, on their Facebook page. They're now doing Facebook Lives. We're promoting pages, posts off of their page, as well as running ads. And right now they're doing anywhere between 10, 20, 25K a day in ad spend, and they're able to maintain low CPMs. I think at the moment, maybe they're $12, $13, $14, but they're still highly profitable. So it takes a bit of effort to understand and apply what needs to go into reducing CPMs, but it's worth it. And I think that's something which a lot of people maybe overlook that do get started with ads and get caught up with the shiny things about, should I do CBO or ABO or manual bid or auto bid and things like that. They're all the tweaks that come later on. Like get your car on the racetrack, get it race ready, and start racing it without worrying about all the tweaks and stuff. And for me, that's about understanding your avatar and your funnel and getting all of that primed, and then being able to bolt on all the things you need to kind of keep Facebook happy as well. So there's a question about quality scores. So you've mentioned how do you guys maintain an above average quality score with high price points? So the question you're asking is, with higher price points, you're getting lower quality scores. So some of the signals like bounce rate are high, average session rates, etc. Now, when you have the way I see it is there's 2 factors that go into the funnel that I build when it comes to Facebook. One is how much does the product cost, and therefore how hard do I have to try to convince them to spend, and then how well known is the product. So, for example, you've mentioned the ski wear brand. If you show a picture of someone skiing and you talk about apparel, people that are not interested in skiing will kind of skip past it, and people that are will engage. So that's the first thing to take away. The second thing is, if we are showing an ad about skiing and the ad is talking about some great clothing or whatever it is, and we get them to click that ad, how do we get them not to bounce? That's by working on that landing page, doing lots of testing and seeing what would work. Now, for example, for that particular brand, not that I'd recommend it in the majority of occasion, we actually found that running traffic to their category page worked better than going for individual product pages. It's probably more of the exception than the norm, but for them that worked. And that all comes through testing to find out what's working for different brands, different products, different niches, different countries and things like that. So, part of keeping your quality scores high is finding the right user journey and also doing the right optimization in Facebook. So for example, if you're always optimizing for purchase, it's great that you're able to target people that are maybe purchase ready, but if your product is higher ticket and it needs a longer time to consider, let's say, for example, we were selling furniture in the UK and the average price point was £300 to £400. Top of funnel, we were optimizing for add to cart because we knew that that was a strong signal on day one. So it was a one-day click optimization to know that this person was interested and we had the right person. So over time, we were optimizing for add to cart. We were getting positive signals back to Facebook because that result was happening quite often. And then we knew within the next 7 days, our retargeting would kick in to get them to convert. And that's how we profitably scaled that as well. Wilfred, do you have any idea how this can happen? I'm starting to see more often at the moment. Lower cost per result, but worse ranking. So here we're talking about quality ranking, engagement ranking, and conversion rate ranking. Now, the one thing about that is, if you remember back in the day, we had relevance score. So relevance score was replaced with 3 different metrics: quality ranking, engagement ranking, and conversion ranking. I've scaled ads that have had relevance scores of 2, 3, and 4. So generally you look at that and say, well, out of 10, those ads are quite poor. But the problem is that's just an indicator. That's just Facebook telling you a fact that, based on their rankings, this is what they're telling you is happening. It doesn't mean that your performance is bad. So in your case, for example, if you're getting €5 cost per purchase and Facebook is telling you that conversion rate ranking is below average, all it's saying is this in the auction, this has performed at this level versus others in the auction. It means that, for example, others are converting higher. It doesn't mean that you're converting too low because let's take an example. So if that person is selling a $10 product and they're converting at 5 or 10%, and you're selling a $100 product, but you're converting at 1%, if you're profitable, that's really what matters. So I would focus on CPA and ROAS as a focus. Those metrics are there as just indicators. Now, if something goes wrong, if your CPA starts to go up or your return on ad spend drops, then you look at those metrics to figure out what's going on and maybe, figure out if that's something you need to optimize for and, improve your conversion rate, et cetera, et cetera. Question from Simardeep. What is a typical landing page bounce rate for Facebook paid traffic? Our landing page is around 40% bounce rate with load speeds 1.2, niches, outdoor, sporting, good space. Kind of depends on quality of ads and how your lander is set up. I'd say 30 to 40% for paid marketing is about right. I'd say 30% maybe you would want to aim for that. But I think 40%, if you're getting that for Facebook right now, load speeds of 1.2. And if it's not load speed, then it's obviously something to do with your lander to try and get more people to stick onto your site as well. Question from Matteo. Hi, bro. I have a multi-brand streetwear, clothing e-com. What's the best strategy in the prospecting phase? DABA, so dynamic ads to broad audience, segmented by catalog and category. Test different creatives that bring the users to the category or creatives that bring the users to the homepage. My answer is always going to be test. Like, I can't give you the perfect silver bullet strategy because none exists. Like, I can tell you, try this, try this, try this, and you can go away. Some things might work, some things don't. I do this myself. Like, I fail often, but that's all part of learning. I can't go into any ad account and immediately profit from day one. I doubt anyone who's been doing Facebook or anyone that's doing Facebook ads can go into a brand new ad account and just hit it off on day one and just constantly stay profitable. That's the point of testing. Testing is an investment. So you've mentioned a few different strategies there. Why would you not test them? Using dynamic ads to broad audiences, using that top of funnel, categorizing that, it's a decent strategy. Why not test it? Using different creatives that bring the user to the category or the product page, that's also a decent strategy. Test it. Or using creatives that take people to the homepage, which is the third one that you mentioned. If the homepage is good, test it. So at the start of this kind of process, I would be looking at my avatar, the ad angles, the targeting, etc. Come up with that test plan and go through this systematically. That's how I've been successful. I don't have a special black book that has all these secret funnels and secret methods, and I can pull it out every time I need to use a strategy. all of my strategies are open. There's nothing secretive about it. The only thing that changes is my avatar building, my core form, my 5W avatar, all those processes that go into Facebook before I start running ads. And then when I'm running ads, it's just basic. A few different campaigns, testing, prospecting, retargeting, and then building up from that. So I definitely recommend you do test those out and see what works best for you as well. Stephen says, my clients are in the ladies fashion brand. Our top of funnel are Facebook Lives and retarget with dynamic creative. This works great, except we sell out of stock within days, sometimes less than 24 hours. We've already increased stock. That's a great problem to have, by the way. We've already increased stock levels 10K as sales went from 10 to 132K in March. Awesome. My concern is that I keep having to change the ads every 4 to 5 days due to stock being sold out. Is this constant changing of ads affecting the campaign performance? I run campaign budgets across all campaigns. So in short, yes, because the more you give Facebook in terms of stability, the more it will therefore stabilize. So yes, the short answer is there will be an impact, but what else do you do in this scenario? One thing I would recommend is, if you can manage budgets up and down. So for example, if you've got Facebook Lives that you're just running as videos, you can still run those at lower budgets. So you can kind of increase and decrease those budgets as you need to. The retargeting campaigns, you can still keep them going, but then on your landing page where you have your out of stock message, have an email capture and make it such that the person understands that you missed out this time. Our stock moves really fast. Enter your email address here and we'll keep you informed as soon as our next batch of stock comes in. So I had this same conversation with someone in my elite group earlier. When you are running those ads, keep the ads running, because when you stop running ads, what happens is Facebook care massively about recency. So your recent results, 7 days, 14 days, etc., have a bigger weight overall on your account, your pixel, your ads, and your ad set than data from a month ago, 2 months ago, for example. So make sure that you are at least maintaining those ads, even at smaller spend. And you've got something that you can use to capture them back into your funnel as well. Let's see here. So this one's a slightly longer one. So isn't it better to do stage 1 ad testing and stage 2 audience testing? I saw that broad targeting is pretty much the same as all the other targetings. Facebook is simply too good at this stage. I'm not sure what you mean by that. So if you're on the BPM method, if that's what you're asking about, stage 1 testing for me is find a few good ads and go and test new audiences. Phase 2 testing is you've got good audiences, let's now find new creatives. So for me, that's how I phase my testing. So I'm not sure if that's what you mean as well. Part 2, results very inconsistent in 3 days of testing for a stage, like 40 CPP one day, 140 CPP the other day. When I do testing, that's not my goal. So I don't know if you've got a different strategy, but I'm testing against, does this ad work for this audience? That's all I want to know. So I'm often looking at other metrics outside of purchase as well. So no, I don't experience that. How do you avoid audience overlap in the lookalike? So this is one of the reasons I like to use CBO, campaign budget optimization, because when you're running your ad sets and your ads there, Facebook is dealing with the audience overlap, and it's better at managing the spend than you are with ad set budgets. So that's the kind of way that I prefer to handle it as well. Question from Star, good to see you here. When we're adjusting our ads budget by 20% at a time, is that per account or per campaign? So if you're running CBO, it's per campaign. So Facebook have recently, maybe I'm talking about recent, maybe it was a year ago, maybe it was a year and a half ago, what the Facebook have said is with your budgets, you can go up to 40% without disrupting things too much. 20% is safer. I generally go for 30%. Now, with CBO, what I've personally found is that I can do 30% bumps per bump and be safe. So what I mean by that is I've often scaled 30% to 3 times a day, and it's been okay. I would only recommend you do that when you've got really good stability, you've got really good performance. But 20% per campaign is kind of fine. Brandon, how far away do you believe iOS 14 is, and what are your immediate moves to assess the impact? So iOS 14.5, which is where Apple are releasing this update, is pretty much live. I think they're like a late beta. I don't know. long and short is it's pretty much live now. People have started to receive the messages. So it's going to take time to roll out, because don't forget, there's going to be a rollout where some people are using it, some people are using it, then there'll be a big adoption. So looking at iOS 13, it was released at a similar time and in a kind of similar way in 2020. It didn't reach kind of peak usage or kind of majority of people on it until kind of October time 2020. So what I'm expecting is the biggest impact will be felt in Q4 of 2021. Thanks, Apple. That's going to be really helpful. So that's what I'm planning for, is that towards the end of the year, that's going to be a big problem for us. What I'm working on is testing different tools for attribution. I'm keeping a close eye on the numbers. I'm looking at iOS usage versus Android versus desktop. I'm measuring my conversion rates, et cetera, et cetera. Ultimately, no one really knows what's going to happen. I've obviously written up quite a big, extensive guide on as much as I know, and that's on my blog. If you want to go and get it, depeshmandalia.com/blog. But beyond that, we're just monitoring it week by week. Get on my newsletter, depeshmandalia.com. If you want to have the updates, I share them when they come in. But beyond just testing and seeing and being in the weeds of what's going on, it's a guessing game for so many people as well. Let's see. So Facebook user, Mr. or Mrs. Anonymous, how many cold calling I need to generate 2 to 5 appointments per day? That's a super broad question. I'm not entirely sure how I would answer that. Work backwards. Like if you're generating if you want to generate 5 appointments a day, what's your conversion rate from click to call? So if you get 100 clicks and you get 5% conversion rate, then you're going to generate 5 calls. What's it going to cost you to get 100 clicks? What's your click-through rate need to look like, etc. You kind of work back in terms of that. So you've asked about cold calling. I'm not entirely sure. I assumed cold traffic generation for that as well. Genesis, you're in Philippines. Awesome. Mohammed in Egypt. Rajashi says, what is Facebook CAPI? C API, conversion API. So the conversion API is, so right now, when you work with Facebook ads, you have a pixel. The pixel is installed on your website. The problem is that cookies, privacy blockers, all this kind of stuff are disrupting that pixel from getting data from your website over to Facebook. So Facebook introduced the conversion API, which sits at the server level. So the difference is the web browser, which you're most likely watching this video from, is at the mercy of whoever's running that web browser, first of all. So it could be Chrome, Safari, Firefox, etc. Then it's also at the mercy of any plugins. So you might have privacy blockers that people have installed and things like that. That controls the browser experience. So they can block cookies and data tracking and stuff like that. What server level does is it just uses data from your server and passes it straight to Facebook. So for example, if a conversion comes in, then Facebook can get that data without worrying about what the browser's doing. And that's a way to kind of improve and enhance the data that you're able to pass back so that the optimization's better, the reporting's better, et cetera, et cetera. Abby, good to see you here. Automated webinar program directing to evergreen webinar. $495. Should I optimize for leads or purchase? Currently optimizing for purchase, but seeing a little bit of inconsistency. So this comes down to giving Facebook stability. If, for example, you were getting 30 to 50 purchase conversions a week, then I'd say, yeah, use conversion because you're getting lots and lots of stability that way. If, for example, you're getting at least 30 to 50 leads per week, then I would start by optimizing for that. Now, one of the strategies I learned probably back in 2015 now, when I was scaling heavily for an e-com store, and I had a really educated Facebook expert. So I know now when we talk about Facebook experts, you get the kind of low-level support, and then you get a Facebook rep. This is the third layer up. These are the people that don't manage more than 10 ad accounts, and they really know their stuff. So one of the things he taught me was often when you want to optimize and stabilize, you start off with the pixel that you can generate the most conversions for, and then you slowly move that conversion pixel on. What I mean by that is you might optimize for leads now, get some stability, and then get some sales coming through, obviously through retargeting, and then the same ad set you can optimize now for purchase. It's not to say it's a perfect strategy, because obviously changing optimization events can have a disruption as well. And there is a technique to get that running. However, for yourself, if you're optimizing for leads and you're getting good quality come through, that's one option. The other thing that I've done that's worked really well is if you can get a pixel installed on not just lead, but for example, showing up to the webinar. So if I think about so we've got webinars on EverWebinar and things like that. So there's different pixel events you can actually choose. You don't have to just do lead or purchase. So number one, have they registered is a lead potentially. Number two, have they clicked the link from the email to go and watch the live? Have they actually watched the live? Did they hit the cart page, etc.? So now there should be other options you can explore. So for example, for ours, I think we optimize for the cart page, not necessarily purchase. And that seemed to work really well as well. So the goal for consistency is to give Facebook enough data. Often when you just go for leads, you might not get the quality. So if you go for something like has turned up to the webinar, or has watched the webinar, or has visited the cart page, that can give you better stability as well. Angel, so what are the consequences you're seeing in your Facebook accounts after iOS 14? Is it bad? Any news from Facebook, etc.? So iOS 14, the badness hasn't yet kicked in. So we're in April right now. Don't worry, the bad stuff hasn't yet happened. But do start planning. Stay close to the forums and the groups and the emails and stuff. My Facebook group, Facebook Ads Experts Academy, my email list on depeshmandalia.com. I share as much as I can as soon as I know it. It's part of my job as an agency owner. It's part of my job as a coach and a teacher, and also as part of kind of leading communities and stuff as well. So I'm absolutely staying close to it. At the moment, we're not seeing anything negative directly from iOS 14. We are seeing in the community, in particular, some negative feedback in terms of stability and performance, and what people are seeing in their ad accounts and things like that. So there are things happening in the background where Facebook are making changes. They're trying to get ready, and they're preparing for the imminent release of iOS 14. So I think the next 3 to 6 months are going to be bumpy. Right now, we're kind of okay at the moment. Abby, yes, absolutely. Good spot. Star, when dividing budgets between TOF, MOF, and BOF, top of funnel, middle of funnel, and bottom of funnel, would you agree with putting roughly 70% at the top and 15 in each of the ones below? I'd say generally that's about right. Obviously, as you start to see better performance bottom of funnel, you can tweak up those budgets. But I'd say generally that's the kind of split that we'd end up with. And then often, depending on how it's performing, you might see the inverse in terms of where the sales are being generated. And sometimes, for example, you might optimize for something like add to cart, top of funnel. It's driving good traffic into your store or your website, and you're remarketing, but you're getting most of your sales bottom of funnel, which is normal as well. Samir, why do ad sets stop performing after going well for 1 or 2 days and then drop in performance when testing at lower budget? So there's a few things behind this. Number one, why do ad sets stop performing sometimes after going well for 1 or 2 days? What happens is Facebook are delivering you good quality users, but once they exhaust that small kind of pot of good traffic, if you don't have enough budget or enough data coming through, Facebook then struggle to maintain that list of that quality of customers. So if you imagine, if you've got an audience of 1 million and you're going after people who are interested in purchasing or purchased recently, so you're optimizing for purchase, and day 1, day 2 starts really well, they may have targeted a few thousand people, and you're creaming off the easy traffic. At that point, it starts to exhaust, and Facebook doesn't know in all of this audience who else to go for, because it's still learning. And there's a few things about that. Number one is increasing the budgets a bit sooner. Number two is not testing too many ads, so your data doesn't get too broad. Number three, sometimes what works is just duplicating and trying again, maybe with a higher budget, maybe even testing manual bid as well. And then, one of the points you've made is why then when you drop the budget lower, does it maybe start improving? One of them is a strategy or a tactic that I call the Punisher method. When you reduce the budget, you're actually telling Facebook, I am not happy. That's the Punisher method. So I've been using it for many, many years now, teaching the BPM method. When you drop your budgets, that's a negative signal for Facebook. When you increase your budgets, that's a positive signal. And that's why I tell people, when you are scaling, don't scale too early, because if your performance isn't that good and you start to really bump those budgets up, what you're telling Facebook is, I'm really, really happy with performance, go and spend more money. And if that performance is still unstable, you're just going to get more instability. So in the same way, when you reduce your budgets, you're telling Facebook you're not happy. That often just nudges the algorithm to try and find different users as well. Rebecca, what % of people are opting out of iOS 14 traffic? I don't either work for Apple or Facebook, so I will never know. Hopefully the statisticians will one day release that data. I know from what I think one of the surveys that was released after a GPS notification went out on Apple, I think it might have been iOS 13 or something else, about, I think 60% opted out of GPS tracking. So GPS doesn't feel as invasive as looking at your browsing data. Who knows? It could be 70%, could be 80%. So that's also going to depend on how well Facebook convince people that they should be allowing them to track. So I think that's going to be an interesting one as well. Andrew, should we graduate our winning ads into new campaigns and scale those, or should we just let them running the same campaign? So there's two scenarios here. Number one, when I'm doing my phase 1 testing, when I'm testing new audiences with creatives, if I find winners there, often, I name that campaign phase 1. I will often just rename that as phase 3, because that's now running. You don't really need to shift that over. If I'm in phase 2, where I've got audiences from phase 3 and I've moved them into my phase 2 testing to find new creatives, in that case, I would duplicate and share post ID as well. Jesus says, landing pages and the impact on cost per click. Does SEO matter on landing pages? Does it impact SEO, the CPC? So first of all, SEO does matter, not just because of Google, so SEO, search engine optimization, but SEO is about the syntax of your website. So if you think about the Facebook pixel, how does it know what your page is about? How does it know what your niche is? How does it know whether it's an apparel store versus a beauty brand or whatever? Facebook are reading the same data that Google read. And I would argue that the better your SEO is on your page, the better that Facebook can understand what your site is about, and the better it can find users when you go broad, for example, or if you've got bigger audiences. So that can then result in higher click-through rates, higher conversion rates, better profitability. So I would say that SEO absolutely matters. If you can do SEO, if you're consciously thinking about it as you're designing your funnel and your landing page, then it can only be a benefit. I cannot see any negative of running SEO for Facebook. Jeremy, good to see you here as well. We're advertising many products, trying to find the best ROI overall. As far as lifetime value is concerned, so we can focus advertising. Awesome. Analyzing is not that easy. So using Shopify, Klaviyo, Google Analytics, what's an easy way to at least doable way to segment customers for the first product they purchase, so we can compare LTV across products that we're advertising. So in the past, I've used data warehouses. So as a simplest example, you can use pivot tables in Excel or Google Sheets. I believe there are some apps that you could possibly install on Shopify. I'm trying to think of the ones we've been looking at recently. But there's Shopify apps that can try and do this. You can also just pull the data out and create your own pivots and spreadsheets. And by the way, if you're not that comfortable with spreadsheets and things, just go to Fiverr or Upwork and just pick someone up relatively cheap, tell them exactly what you want, and you'll just save yourself a ton of time. You might pay $50, $150, $250, whatever it is, and tell them, this is what I want to model this. And then all you need to do is keep the data updated, and there you have it. You've got all the info you need to be able to make those decisions on lifetime value as well. Cliff, we've been going 5 years and have a winning product. In the last 6 to 8 weeks, we've seen our purchaser lookalike ad performance totally crap out. Interests seem to be working better. Also, we launch an ad set and it gets 20 purchases in the first 24 hours and suddenly hits learning limited. no more sales come in. So learning limited is a big issue for a lot of people. I don't know what your budgets are, but I mean, if you're hitting 20 purchases in the first 24 hours, you're obviously in a decent place. Without looking at what's going on, it's hard to diagnose. If Facebook don't have a clue, it's possibly because they're not really looking at the right things. So if you've got, so let's go back. So you've got lookalikes that are not working. First of all, have you refreshed the custom audiences? Have you rebuilt the lookalikes? There are times where I've been running lookalikes and they've just stopped working and it doesn't make sense. All I've done is either just rebuilt the lookalike or just rebuilt the custom audience. That can sometimes work. So that's the first thing. Launching an ad set and getting 20 purchases in the first 24 hours and going to Learning Limited, it could be that certain ads are getting more of the conversions than others, and therefore it's limiting the learning in that way. I don't know. You could try duplicating and trying it again and see what happens. But it's not a common thing for this to happen. So I can't really diagnose and tell you what's going on. The Learning Limited side of things is usually an indicator. When you get Learning Limited and your performance completely bombs, there's obviously something else going on, and that would need some kind of analysis. Is it, are some of your pixel signals not being sent back to Facebook, going to your events manager? Look at your pixel. Are you getting the right signals? Are you getting the right amount of data being passed back for your spend? Have a look at your, assuming it's e-com, have a look at your cost per add to cart, initiate checkout, purchase. Is there any anomaly in what you'd expect? Maybe install the conversion API. Maybe the data that you're expecting to hit Facebook's not hitting as well. So it's difficult to give you one solution, but there are just a few things that I'd be looking at as well. Nuno, good to see you here. So you already asked a question on Monday. So that was in the BPM method Q&A. So phase 2, when you create a new creative, when you test that new creative and you test it with one winner audience, or you test it against every audience, I'm asking this because the new creative may not work with the audience. Yeah, so I would, so this, okay, that makes sense. So when I have my phase 2 creative testing, I usually have a few different audiences, and usually my best audiences. So let's say you've got a 1% lookalike that works really well. You've got 3%. You've got broad. You've got an interest-based ad set. I would have all of those in phase 2 and test the same ads against all of those different audiences. So you're absolutely right. You want to make sure that you're not just limiting an ad for one audience, because it could work with one audience and not another one as well. So hopefully that helps your question. And then a follow-up you've got is ad account organization. What do you do when you begin to have lots of ad sets and ads, winners and losers in your test campaigns? Do you delete old ad sets and ads? If I have losers, I would generally delete them if I needed to make up the space. Sometimes you can just edit them and give them another go. But if you're worried about running out of the number of ads you can have in your ad account, for example, you can just delete them. Just take the learnings. So document everything in a spreadsheet or something like that, and just make sure that you can at least retain those learnings that you've had as well. Secret source to account organization, not really. I think it's, you just have to keep things clean. I like to minimize the number of campaigns and ad sets and ads, so I am a fan of simplification, but yeah, I think your message has been cut off. I can't see what the example was, so hopefully that helps as well. Facebook user, Mr. or Mrs. Anonymous, is your agency helping your clients on the back end with email, etc., to grow AOV and LTV? If so, what are you implementing? At the moment, we partner with email agencies, so we would go in and analyze all the way through the funnel where the opportunities are, where the issues are. If it's kind of light touch, if it's kind of just having a look at particular emails that are not performing and testing a few things out, we can do that. If it's something more fundamental, like implementing email or changing things around and looking at different funnels and things like that, we just partner with or bring in consultants to help us out with email. So, as an agency owner, you've got a few different routes you can take with scaling up and giving your clients everything they need. One is that you hire for every single instance of paid search and TikTok and Snapchat and email and Facebook and all of that. Then you become a large agency, or you get people that are multidisciplinary. But also bear in mind, the more channels that someone has an expertise in, the less depth generally they have with something as well. Or you can have a core competency, like Facebook and Instagram and things like that, and then partner up with consultants or other agencies to fill in the gaps where maybe you're not delivering it. So we're always kind of thinking about, right, do we now go and hire someone that knows TikTok ads? Do we train our current media buyers? Do we partner with someone else as well? So that's always an ongoing question around kind of where you are, where you want to be, and what that kind of growth path looks like for you as well. So SEO matters for Google ad campaigns too. Absolutely, that's true. Let's have a look at the next one. Simone from Italy, say hello. I say hello back. Shubham, what's your opinion regarding not receiving any data from opt-outs outside of one-day click data? What attribution settings should we go for moving forward? It's about testing and seeing what works. I mean, this comes up very often. I say the same thing. First of all, if you've got a question on which optimization event to use, then test it. Use Facebook split test tool. As a general rule of thumb, I found that one-day click works well with CBO, but there are occasions where 7-day works better, where the consideration path is that much bigger. It also depends on your retargeting. So for example, if I'm optimizing for initiate checkout, top of funnel, and that's what my CBO is aiming for, I'll do one-day click because I only want people on this day that are more likely to get into my checkout, and then retargeting might optimize for purchase. So but then retargeting might have a 7-day view because it's collecting data from all those interactions that are happening after. So it really depends on what your funnel looks like as well. So like for products with a lower target CPA, would you still recommend setting a budget using target CPA times number of ad sets times 3, even if that number equals less than 250 for the prospecting phase? So if your number finishes ends up less than 250, maybe your target CPA is too low, or maybe you've just got cheap CPMs. So this is a general rule of thumb that works. It's not the absolute rule that you have to follow every single time. If you think that budget's too low, then increase it $300, $350, for example, to whatever you need to get good amount of traffic through into that test. So that's a rule of thumb. That just means that's what I generally start off following. Doesn't need to be the minimum or the maximum when it comes to testing. Samir, when do you know if the audience targeted becomes overused? I'm about to drop a Facebook post on that, but essentially what I focus on is at the ad set level, go into inspect tool and look at the saturation. That's how many people in that audience have seen the ad at least once. That number, when it's above 40% is okay. When it starts to drop down below that, it is really good time to switch those ads around. But before that, I'm looking at my stats and my performance. One of the comparisons I look at is if I see return on ad spend dropping and cost per acquisition going up at the same time as click-through rate going down, that is a strong indicator that this creative needs to be changed. If it's an audience thing, the audience generally, if I've gone through 5 or 10 different ads and I've gone through looking at different ways to try and get my angles and messages across, and nothing's working, then at that point I might give up on the audience. But even then, I'll still come back 30 days later to retest it, especially if it's an audience that's been working. So I'm more likely to change out ads than I am audiences. Anikat says, does 50 conversions per week really improve performance of the ad set? So having a minimum of 30 per week gives stability. So it doesn't mean your performance is going to be better or worse. It's about stability. Stability then, once you've got regular results coming in, that then supports scaling. So that's definitely an important part of thinking about your kind of pre-scaling plan, is to get that stability in place as well. Pam, you would do better using a CTM ad instead of a landing page. Facebook likes to keep users on its platform instead of marketers sending users off Facebook to an external landing page. So this is 100% true. So the way to see this is when you have a user on the newsfeed and you're trying to get that user out of Facebook, Facebook are going to punish you with a cost per click. That cost per click is dependent on your CPMs and things like that. So when you have, for example, an instant collection ad or some kind of, let's say, mobile experience that keeps them on Facebook. So I do like the collection ad format because it's using a dynamic product catalog for e-com, for example, but it gives a good landing page experience on Facebook. and those clicks are definitely cheaper. Those interactions are definitely cheaper because it's a big cost for Facebook, because for Facebook, engagement matters. The more users are engaged, the more data they share with Facebook, and the more Facebook can then monetize them. So see a click as a punishment to Facebook. It might just take a bit of a while to get your head around it, but every time a user clicks an ad off Facebook, Facebook don't like it. Yes, of course, they want your money and things like that, and they need your money, but also they don't like it. So that's why they try so hard to make sure your user experience is good, because if they're going to give up that user to you, you better give them a good experience, because that user ultimately belongs to Facebook until they convert with you as well. With Sam, sometimes I get 6% conversion, which is really high. Facebook gives me below average conversion rate. Should I be concerned? Absolutely not. All it means is that Facebook are telling you that compared to other people, that your ad is converting lower. It just means that other people in the auction are converting higher. So it's not anything to be worried about as long as your performance is good. How many creative do you suggest to test if we want to scale? Really depends on how much budget you've got and how fast you're scaling. I try and aim for, and this is in the post I'm writing up right now as well, I aim for a 1-to-5 ratio. For every ad I'm running, I want 5 backup ads. Sometimes it's 1-to-2, sometimes it's 1-to-1. That's fine as well. But just make sure you've got more backup ads. You've got enough backup ads to be ready. So if one ad goes down, you've got one ad back in. So 1-to-1 ratio is the minimum. If you've got one ad that goes down, you've got 2 ready, that's 1-to-2 ratio. That's great, 1-to-5, whatever. So that's what I would keep in mind in terms of keeping things going. Dylan says, expanding on the 5W avatar, when you use personalization, how do you get the personalization to maintain across multiple touch points? Passing URL parameters, retargeting wouldn't see the personalization. Is there any way? So you can actually retarget on UTM parameters as well. So just bear in mind, when you are creating your custom audience, you can create a custom audience based on the URL string. So within that, you could create a custom audience that says, if the URL parameter equals women or men or whatever the parameter is, then remarket to them in this particular ad set and give them these ads. So that is one way of doing it. Yes, you're going to make your audiences smaller, so be aware of that. But that's certainly one way of doing that. Obviously, the other way of doing personalization is using dynamic catalog ads as well, DPA, dynamic product ads. But there are just a few things that you can explore as well. Jing says, if an ad set was performing well in ABO during testing, but tanked in CBO with another tested audience, what could have caused it? So it's hard to tell, because I don't know what your process has been to get that ad to pass the test. So as I've said before, if you're doing your testing and you're not testing in the way I do it, which is impressions based and minimize the amount of spend and the amount of time the ad spends in the auction, then what ends up happening is the more time it spends in testing, the more impressions it gets, the more spend it gets. If the performance is good, Facebook really, really optimizes that ad set, and it focuses in on this ad set plus this ad, or these ads really work together. Now, when you pull that ad out and you try and recreate the ad set in a different campaign, i.e. CBO, Facebook is scrapping all of that history. So now it's a game of chance whether you're going to get that same performance again. So that's sometimes what happens with the testing as well. Jeremy says, so Jeremy, I'm actually streaming to 4 different places right now. So I don't know where you guys are replying to me from. I just have a single stream of comments. So hopefully I've answered your question. I think I answered at least one anyway. Mihai says, what are some next level things to implement in the fashion niche that no one is talking about? That's a super broad question. Like, there's 2 sides of this. One is, if you're scaling and you're going from 7 to 8 figures, then you're going to have to think a lot differently to a lot of other people. On the flip side, if you've got a product that is super saturated, you're going to have to think a lot differently to other people. One of the questions I would also put is paid advertising the right thing for you? I'll give you an example. A friend of mine back in the UK, he launched his brand on Instagram. He didn't spend anything on ads. He made a 7-figure business and an exit purely through Instagram organic. So, like, what I would say is, when you're running fashion, think about who your prospect is and where your audience is. Something I talk about is OPA, other people's audiences. So if you have influencers, if you have other ways of, celebrities, and maybe people have email lists associated to your particular niche, it's I think some of those things get forgotten. Like Facebook ads isn't the only channel that's going to get you success. There's so many different ways of doing it. There's different ways of getting attention. Everything now in advertising is about attention, and then being where your ideal prospects are. For example, we had someone in the jewelry niche. He went off on his own back and created a TikTok video, and within, I think, a day or 2 days, they were completely out of stock because that video went viral. He didn't know what he was doing. It was just something that he wanted to do. And sometimes those things happen. So exploring different strategies just to get engagement and get in front of your user, I think that not enough people are talking about that, to be honest. Sal, what's your recommended scaling budget for fashion and e-commerce? So that's a super broad question. As much as you can spend, the scaling budget is dependent on what's come before in terms of testing, what confidence you have in the testing that you've put in place, and therefore, ultimately you want to spend as much as you can, right? As long as you're profitable and as long as you've got money in the bank, you want to spend as much as you can. So it's really difficult to say, you need to set this money aside for scaling. Depends on how your testing has gone, how your optimization's gone, what data has come before it, and then you want to start spending more and more. Work on stability first. That's the only thing I'd say before you start really pushing on scaling as well. So Daniel says, I don't have a photo in my profile. That's fine. Bought the BPM method and cookbook. Is it still policy that I need to get one? Right. So the ad policy guide on ad, and by the way, we've got a new URL for that, adscompliance.com. That's already part of the BPM method. So if you've got the BPM method, you don't need that policy guide. It's part of the initial setup process. But for those that don't want the BPM method, it's on adscompliance.com. It's what, $47. If you're serious about keeping your ad account safe and active and all those things, there's no guarantee at the end of the day. You can go and learn it yourself. You can follow my guide, but my guide's giving you an advantage in that this is what we use in our agency. Every time we launch a campaign, these are the things we're checking off. Have we done this? Have we done this? Have we done this? It's your ad account, your pixel, verifying your domain, your landing page, all the things that go in of all the key things you need to think about. So it's definitely worth looking at just to make sure that you're covering all the right areas as well. I think I've got time for maybe a few more questions. Lucas, for me, it's always starts as learning limited, and after a couple of unsuccessful weeks, they go to active. So, Facebook's it's not a perfect system. Sometimes bugs creep in. It could be that your ad account has got a bug. Maybe there's something going on that Facebook can't see it. Maybe there's something going on as well there. So, very worst case scenario, try a different ad account. Like, I don't usually recommend this for normal practices, but one of the kind of diagnostic tools is to take a step back gradually and see where the problem is. So if it's the ad, try and duplicate the ad, try it again. If it's the ad set, try and duplicate that. If it's campaign, try and duplicate that. Try CBO, try ABO, try different objective, maybe even then try a different ad account, different pixels. So there are just different ways I'd go through to try and figure out what's going on and how we can kind of turn it around as well. Nuno says, notice when using UTM parameters in Facebook, when the ads are going to approve, I get a lot of visits to my Shopify store. Do you know why this happens? I know it's not real people and only happens when I'm using UTM. So if you go into Google Analytics and you do a breakdown on visitors, often you'll see one of two locations. So one will be San Francisco, and you have a huge spike of people from there. Sometimes it's from Dublin. Could be other places as well. It's often usually just bots. They're just crawling your site and just figuring out what's going on. So and it does happen. Don't worry. Generally, in those cases, you're not being charged, but you will see a spike in visits from Facebook, and other platforms do it as well. So final question from Emily. I'm working on an ad account which keeps getting their ads rejected when we are not breaking policies. would it be a good idea to create a new ad account and start over? Sometimes you can get caught up in your ad account being flagged. If you have a Facebook rep, that's one way to get that flag overridden and removed. The other way is just go and speak to the Facebook chat support. I actually find that often the Facebook chat support is better, maybe more efficient than Facebook reps. So you can go in there and just say, look, this is what's going on. Can you have a look, etc. Be persistent, be kind, and polite, but just tell them, say, it's really causing a lot of frustrations. My client's upset, or if it's your own business, to say, look, I'm struggling to run my small business here. Can you please help out? And often they will, and that will save you the headache of starting a new ad account. You can start a new ad account. I'm always apprehensive of when you've got penalties on your page or your ad account or your profile of creating a new one, because Facebook, if they link that you're trying to circumvent their systems, they can completely ban your business manager. So I'm not saying that's going to happen, but just be aware that when you do try and work around an issue, you can create a bigger one. So first thing, try and reach out to Facebook and get that fixed if you can, and then just figure out if that's something which it might be a quicker fix than trying to create an ad account and reset everything as well. Cool, guys, thanks for joining us on this live. We've been just over an hour. Hopefully that was useful. I think I got through most of the questions. If I didn't get through your question, apologies. We will try and do this again at some point. Keep touch in the Facebook Ads Experts Academy group, on my Facebook page, on my YouTube channel, and also the email list where we publish these out to as well. Visit the bpmmethod.com if you want to see how we actually turn these strategies into kind of stable, profitable, and scalable campaigns. But beyond that, I appreciate you guys. It's always useful for me to see who's in the community, where you guys are from, all the amazing different challenges and opportunities you've got as well. And if I've helped in any way, then let me know. I'd love to know kind of what works for you guys. And apart from that, have an amazing rest of your day. If you're watching the replay, then hopefully this has been useful for you. For those on the live, appreciate you joining, and I shall catch you again soon.